Well, we've got ourselves a dry shell almost completely. Windows are in. I got these two crank out 18 by 48 Anderson Silver Line, which is their lower end stuff that they purchased from another business. I got those for 50 bucks each, or no, 50 bucks for the pair. And one of the things we were thinking here is, you know, we've been looking through this thing up until today basically, and so I had a line of sight through this face over into the yard there, and you know, there was one straight through the door and out the back that isn't there anymore. And so we basically were looking at, because these were purchased as something that somebody returned, you know, what would it take to put 1, 2, 3 more in here so that it was really cooler architecturally, but also more functional for being able to open up the yard. But those are $275 each, and I'm not going to be spending $1,000 to put 3 more windows in here right now. It could be done any time. You know, these were toenailed in, these studs, so there's one king there or something. You could take him out, move him over, make another one, put him next to him, you know, copy the cripples in the sill there, and you're ready to install another couple windows any time. The other thing that does need to go in here is the door to let them out. And like I was saying, I want to be able to have a line of sight as to whether or not it's open or closed. I was going to put it in the middle of the face of this wall, but I wasn't willing to move the stud, the framing. There's nothing wrong with going to one side or the other. I think I'll go to the side that is closer to the building, you know, and throw it in here. I'll say another couple things that came out of temporarily installing it over here. I went to all the trouble to use a large size hole saw to give it a fun kind of arch, but I did it at the top and the bottom, and then remembered, oh yeah, the ramp's gonna square the bottom out, so I may as well make that shape hole in my new coop over there. And then this is just tacked here with a screw, and over there I'm going to throw a hinge on it, and or just set it there because I want to be able to mow around. I want to come through and flip it up, or actually, yeah, it won't flip up on a hinge and stay because it's too vertical. So we'll just make it separate or some such thing. Put a little cleat on it, but it can be set. I want to make it so I can quickly set it up out of the way and mow. And the egg boxes are going to come over. Same problem with framing though, due to the window framing. The boxes will work, and that was one of the reasons why the opening, you know, the hole that goes into them is actually a part of whatever building they're on. It's the hole through the sheathing. So in the case of this wall, I'm going to have to figure out a way to make this work, and I'm not quite sure. These aren't really doing anything important. The sheer strength of the screw that holds this cripple to the king is more than enough, you know, to be able to, it could cut them both off actually. And you know, the weight that's hanging on screws, hanging on the sheathing outside is just fine. It would be a bit awkward to have it be the final form with, you know, missing framing like that, but worst case scenario, I'll cut through it and or relocate it. I could always head it off right straight across here with a header. One way or the other, we'll get this figured out so that the egg boxes can be right there below the windows, but we wanted them low enough also that obviously that they're a step up from the floor, but then we want to have room here for window boxes underneath this, you know, underneath the window themselves for flowers. And we'll probably put a hanging basket on a few of the points of the roof, and then that detail across or around the top is still there on the inside, but that was an easier way to sheathe this building completely. I'll just be adding it. I'll be getting 2x4, you know, and painting it white because that'll be the color of it here, and going around. I'll have to probably pick an elevation for the lower part of the door just to fly through as the upper trim, and then whether I drop down to go all the way around or keep it at that height will, you know, TBD. But the little pieces, that's a lot of the work here. Hey, what are you doing out? Nobody said you could do that. You know, making all these little guys is actually a lot of fussy, busy work, so it's nice that they exist already. And the corners, I don't know. I haven't decided whether I'm gonna put proper vertical trim with dimension on there and add, you know, it has that being white as well as the dental around the top and the doors and windows and stuff being white. If that's too busy, or if I'd rather just flash tape and then form on a break just a smooth, or even this wood, you can get this wood texture trim coil, sheet metal, aluminum, like the stuff we use there, but not smooth, but wood, and just put it down with a couple beads of that sealant, that polyurethane sealant, and paint it to match basically. So to look at it now is closer to that aesthetic, you know, because there's nothing designating the corners otherwise, you know, other than light. There's no trim. So I think I'll probably trim the doors and windows first because I know I'm going to do that. And then we'll take a look at, you know, would it be too busy? I'll hold something up there and be like, man, that's, you know, because of the nature of it being small and having conventionally sized or even large windows in the door. Anyway, everything could be too tight and too busy. So we'll look at it as we take those steps and not just go gangbusters and then stand back at the end and go, don't know if that was a good idea. So door's working out, has a few small issues. All these sheets are factory. I took the 1/2 of the shiplap off of one edge because it's actually a little greater than 48 with that when you get it. So anyway, they went down to a true 48, but they're still a perfectly square sheet. And I measured down from the notch in that fascia board up there thing, and you know, noted 48 on the first ledger or the first rim joist. I don't know what I'm talking about. And put a screw there to bear the weight of the sheet. And then I had to come in first under the fascia and then set it, the bottom of it, onto those screws. But that stood it there real nice, and I could find, you know, these mitered pieces here and the details around the top. They're all 48 inches long point of the miter to the other long point of the miter, which is a really helpful. It made this project way easier than it would have been otherwise. You know, so one full sheet went on every side completely with a little rip off the edges, and you know, everything sort of worked out pretty well, nice and straight for the most part. This is, you know, there's degrees of freedom here where I missed a nail or something, like it's my first day, but you know, that was the biggest opening, and that was a bit of a, what do you call that? You know, there's no dimension to it. It sits flush this way. It's just in that way. I think that those pair of trim boards on that top side were a little bit, tiny bit longer too. A couple small areas here where somebody was asleep at the wheel, or it was getting later in the day, or it was the first thing in the morning. Here's another case. Just a bit, like a 1/2 inch too large on those pieces of 2x4 trim. That's, you know, and look at where it goes from the beginning to the end. You'll see that little issue, which is why we're very meticulous when we build, and that's to say me, from scratch, not to make little errors like that. We start military, you know, tight attention to detail, and as we get to the outermost layers, we can start fudging and rounding stuff over, figuratively speaking, sometimes even literally, but not in the beginning or you'll compound error. And anyway, somebody really did do a nice job building this thing despite those couple little things. It made my time of finishing it, which they never probably ever expected, really nice. And I was lucky to get these windows, and it, you know, I did pay attention to which way I wanted them to swing open. I wanted to kind of collect a breeze, and the west is behind us, so that's where we normally get our weather. It's happening today, proof of concept. But you know, they're relatively nice for crank out windows, which, if you're asking me, I don't care for. I like a sash. But given how, I mean, if we have kids someday and they're playing in here and they're rough with these, we'll see how well they hold up. But they're vinyl, you know, 100 P. So that's a big step forward, you know, as far as Anderson crank out windows from the 70s and 80s and stuff. The real wood ones that are just, you know, nowadays you don't unlock it, or the whole sash will fall down and out of there a ways, and you'll never get it back. And you have to climb out on the roof and push it back in. You know, that's what I'm used to when it comes to casement or crank out windows like this. But these move nicely, and they're well geared, so it's only like a dozen times around to close. I'm gonna leave them open for now. And I mean, I was just walking along, and there they were for a super discount. So, you know, gotta have your eyes open and your wits about you at all times. And these will grow a little bit with the visual of the trim. Right now it's a little bit, I don't want to say squinty, more like pig-eyed or something. You know, these items seem a little tiny and misrepresented. It's nice to have, you know, we're looking for that big face, that 3.5 or 4 inch face of trim, which really, you don't want to go too big. We may actually come down to 3 on this or something like that. But anyway, I'm going to do it all in PVC too, just to put my best foot forward here. And that means, because I intend it to be white and the PVC will be white, I may mask and paint this with my spray gun or my big sprayer first, the color we plan on, and then come back and trim it, and then finish the trim to the paint with a little bit of white caulk. Carefully white caulk it. All right, thanks for watching. We'll see ya.